Broward Senate District 33 was one of 3 legislative seats suddenly up for grabs when 3 lawmakers, all Democrats, resigned to run for Congress.
And one of those seats, Senate District 33, which represents a big hunk of central Broward, will be determined by the winner of a special election next month. March 8th is the date. Today, the 2 finalists in that race are with us to make their case for voters. Democrat Rosalind Osgood runs the Development Corporation for the new Mount Olive Baptist Church. She was a Broward County School Board member for a decade, chair of that body, in fact. Republican Joseph Carter is a 3rd-generation Fort Lauderdale native. He is a political newcomer as a candidate, but not new to politics. The Broward County public school teacher was suddenly terminated late last year after publicly calling out the district on their mask mandate policy. To both of you, welcome.
Good morning.
Thank you for having me.
It's really good to have you both here face to face for our little mini debate. And since you're both in education, why don't we just start there? Because you are both on opposite sides of the mask mandate issue. Rosalind Carter, as chair of the board, you were one of the most vocal to ignore the state's ban on mandates and paid some financial consequences for it. Joseph Carter, you say you were terminated for being vocal about not really buying into the mask mandates. So right now in a bill going through the House budget this week, as a matter of fact, would take $200 million from the 12 districts as a penalty for those districts ignoring the mask mandate and give that money to the other 55 that went along with it. So Rosalind, let's start with you if we could. What do you make of that budget retransfer of money?
I think that this continues to give light on this egregious attempt to defund public education. The mask mandate was used. The data showed that it protected our kids and our students and staff with preventing our schools from becoming super spreaders. We have moved on beyond it. The governor has called a special session that made it impossible for us to mandate masks. But yet we have legislation that would target administrators who are not school-based in their salaries, and they had nothing to do with making the decision. It was a board decision, and then subsequent legislation to reduce the salary of school board members. It is an outright attack on school board members who chose to protect and prioritize the people in their district. And this type of weaponizing of policy and legislation is not what we should do in a democracy. I think it's wrong.
Yeah, excuse me, Joseph Carter, you as a teacher and as an individual opposed the mask mandates. You said so in school, you lost your job. Was that a political thing? Did you lose your job because you disagreed with the school board?
Well, to be clear, I didn't say that was a reason I lost my job. The stance that I have taken is the fact that after being terminated, I called the school board several times trying to find a reason and was not given one. My only thing is when you don't give a reason, you just leave a lot to be, determined. I don't know why I was terminated, and there's still a math teacher position open at the school where I was. But to be clear, I wasn't against masks. I was never against masks. I just feel that for a district the size of Broward County, we have 270,000 plus students with varying, disorders, learning disorders, a wide array of situations that only the parents are going to be able to decipher what's best for their child. And I just thought that it was incredibly irresponsible. And quite frankly, I felt like it was just a political move to, start an argument with the governor to make these rash decisions for that many students. I've always felt like more
Mr.
control.
Carter, let me just jump in if I may.
Yeah,
I'm sure Dr. Osgood is going to say, well, look, we relied on medical science, on the recommendations of the CDC. This was not, on a whim. We had that policy in place to protect the safety, life, and well-being of children and staff.
And again, when I spoke at the school board meeting, I made sure that I was, clear in the fact that I believe that their intentions were good. I don't believe anyone was acting in malice. However, we don't know the medical conditions that may prevent students from wearing masks. We don't know the learning disabilities or any reason why a parent would not be comfortable with their child wearing a mask. I believe that we should be, when it comes to children's health and the choices in children's health, we've always given that choice to the child, to the parents. When I was a kid and I got strep throat or I got the flu or the chicken pox, my parents knew, okay, we can't send him to school. And all of a sudden we saw a situation where that choice was being taken out of the hands of the parents, and ultimately that's where it should have been.
So as a candidate, we are not interrupting by choice. We have this much time and a lot to cover and want to hear you so much.
Understood.
So
yeah.
I know that you are a big proponent of parent choice and school choice bills that are right now in the legislature. Rosalind, Osgood, how about you?
I think that we have to look at the decisions and we have to look at the Constitution. The Constitution of the state of Florida says that the citizenry elects local school board members to make decisions. I think when we weaponize a bill and call it parent choice, it's actually disingenuous and misleading. Parents had a medical opt-out with mask mandates. Parents have parent conferences. Many of them volunteer a lot of their time in the school. They're very engaged and active in school and what go on in school. When we pick and choose certain bills and certain legislations to target parents to get them all up in arms about a lot of fake news that's being perpetuated about what's going on in schools, it's wrong and it's disingenuous. Parents have always been involved in their school's education. Immunization has been required for schools. Even when I had to go to school, I had to have certain shots and certain immunizations. So I think as we look at the time of public policy, we need to be honest that our democracy is under attack. I am pro-democracy. I will always fight against anything that won't allow me to imagine a multiracial democracy where every single individual have the right to vote, the freedom to speech, the freedom to expression. And what we're seeing now with current legislation in certain states threatens our entire democracy, and school systems are being targeted because that is a part of the history of this country where we target education in school districts to be disingenuous or evil to certain races.
Joseph Carter, we turn really quickly to redistricting, which is a huge thing going on in Tallahassee right now. And their fight really is over what some lawmakers want to preserve what they call minority districts. I went through some of the things that you've said publicly and tweeted publicly or on Twitter a lot. And you actually had a tweet that, I don't want to quote it because I don't have it in front of me, but you seem to say there are no Hispanic districts, there are no Black districts, they're just districts. And I wonder if you would expand on that as far as your perspective on the redistricting.
Yes, I know the tweet you're talking about, and I said, quite frankly, there should be no Hispanic districts. I grew up in District 20, which is considered a Black district. However, I had neighbors that were white, I had neighbors that were Hispanic, I had neighbors that were Republican, Democrat. There should be no district in this country that purposely represents one group of people. We are all Americans at the end of the day, whether you're Democrat, Republican, Black, white, gay, straight, woman, man, at the end of the day, we're all American. And this is something that my grandfather instilled in me, that we are all Americans. He fought in World War II along people who were white, Black, and he didn't look to his left and look to his right and see a white man. He saw another American soldier fighting for the same cause.
So if you were in that Senate committee, you would not be voting to preserve any sort of minority representation?
I would be voting to preserve.
Valid?
I believe the best way to go about redistricting is to keep as many municipalities intact as possible. I don't like the idea that we have like half of Fort Lauderdale in District 33 and half of Pompano Beach in District 33, because what that does, that creates a disconnect between the state legislatures and the local municipalities. I would prefer a redistricting that simply tried to keep as many cities within a district as possible so that we can have a more integral relationship between state legislators, state senators, and mayors and city commissioners.
We understand, but in fact, Mr. Carter, that is by law what redistricting should be, is not to divide cities or communities, is try to keep them whole and integrated. Dr. Carter, excuse me, Dr. Osgood, Let me ask you, as you well know, this district is a huge part of central Broward County, 521,000 constituents, and 51% of them are black. And they need representation for issues that are important to them. Mr. Carter seems to be saying that's not really a big deal. Is that a big deal?
That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying.
Well,
it is a big deal. And I think that the history of this country has taught us the importance of representation. We all have our different lived experiences. And as we look at Broward County, as it's drastically becoming a minority-majority county, it is important that we have representation from our ethnic groups. It's important that we have representation from our LGBTQ community. When I'm sitting at the table, my lived experience as a Black woman, as a single Black mother, is very different than someone that's not Black. It doesn't make one right or wrong, but when we're all sitting at the table, we can collectively make a decision that's going to be in the best representation of the entire community that we represent.
all right.
And
Well, the election, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to interrupt. The election is March 8th. We really appreciate both of you coming on and expressing your point of view, and good luck with the election. We'll see what happens.
Thank you.
you.
God bless.